I am watching U.S. Navy assets scrambling out of Bahrain as we speak, and you need to understand one thing. The tripwire that has kept the global economy breathing for 50 years was just cut in the dark. At 3:14 a.m. local time, an encrypted command designated as Option 9 was broadcast across secure channels, and the immediate movement of the Fifth Fleet suggests this is no longer a localized skirmish or a routine exercise in freedom of navigation. We are witnessing the physical erasure of the maritime borders that define the modern world. Within the next 48 hours, the logistical lag that keeps your local gas station supplied will reach its limit, triggering rationing protocols we haven't seen since the Carter administration. The petrodollar, the very foundation of American middle-class purchasing power, is effectively entering a period of cardiac arrest. I have reviewed the internal communications suggesting that CENTCOM now views the Strait of Hormuz not as contested water, but as a closed gate. While the evening news discusses diplomatic overtures, 3 specific European heads of state have been moved to hardened bunkers, a protocol reserved only for a total systemic collapse of the energy grid. We have to ask why the command was issued at that specific hour and what the Navy knows that the public does not. The old world stability you woke up with yesterday ended while you were sleeping, and the red line has not just been crossed. It has been removed from the map entirely. To understand why your bank account is currently in the crosshairs, you have to look at a narrow stretch of water just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. This is the Strait of Hormuz, the singular throat of the global energy body. If you were standing on the bridge of a very large crude carrier right now, a vessel 3 times the length of a football field carrying 2 million barrels of oil, you wouldn't see a clear blue horizon. Your radar would be cluttered with silhouettes of ghost ships, small, fast attack craft that aren't broadcasting AIS signals, weaving through the shipping lanes like shadows. The geography here is a literal kill zone. Every day, 20.5 million barrels of oil pass through this bottleneck, representing roughly 20% of the world's total consumption. The math of global civilization is remarkably fragile. It relies on the uninterrupted flow of this specific volume. If this flow stops, the math simply stops working. Mainstream media outlets are characterizing the current blockade as a temporary tension increase, but the raw data suggests a mathematical certainty of collapse. It is not merely the crude oil that is trapped behind this invisible wall. The strait is also the primary exit point for liquefied natural gas, and, perhaps more critically for the tech sector, the transit route for specialized cooling components manufactured in the region that are essential for the server farms in Northern Virginia that hold the internet together. When the lane is cleared, the world functions. When it is obstructed, the just-in-time delivery system that stocks your grocery stores and powers your grid begins to unwind within hours. The Navy cannot simply clear the lane with a few destroyers because the tactical environment has shifted from traditional naval warfare to a swarm protocol developed in Tehran specifically to turn these 21 miles into a graveyard for multi-billion-dollar assets. The nightmare keeping the Pentagon awake is the asymmetric reality of 2026. We are currently seeing $20,000 drones, constructed from off-the-shelf carbon fiber and basic GPS modules, neutralizing 2. Reports are surfacing of an internal rupture within the Department of Defense involving a figure known in intelligence circles as the Silent Admiral. This high-ranking officer reportedly refused an executive order to send Carrier Strike Group 5 directly into the Persian Gulf, citing a 100% loss projection in a saturated swarm environment. This creates a terrifying gap between the optimistic White House press briefings and the actual rules of engagement being followed on the water. We are attempting to use 1980s-era defensive philosophy to fight a 2026 automated swarm, and the results are catastrophic. The public is being told the situation is under control, yet the physical positioning of our most expensive assets tells a story of retreat and recalculation. Keep a close watch on the timeline of these movements, because the acceleration is palpable. In just a few moments, the conversation will shift from naval tactics to the direct trigger for a national bank holiday, because once the ships stop moving, the money stops moving. The institutional betrayal here lies in the refusal to admit that the primary deterrent of the last half-century, the American carrier group, has been checkmated by low-cost, high-volume technology. Many analysts are trying to compare this to the 1973 oil crisis, but that is a dangerous understatement. In 1973, the world was still largely localized. We had a massive manufacturing base in the West and a workforce that didn't rely on global digital synchronization. Today, we have a service-based economy that ceases to function the moment the lights flicker. This is what we call a synthetic oil shock, a crisis where the physical lack of fuel is compounded by the digital complexity of the supply chain. We are also facing the Ukraine multiplier. With Russian Urals oil already restricted and now Iranian light crude removed from the market simultaneously, there is no spare capacity left to cushion the blow. Furthermore, the stance of Saudi Arabia has shifted from an American ally to a position of aggressive neutrality. This is the final nail in the coffin for the petrodollar system. If the Saudis refuse to increase production to offset the blockade, the dollar loses its primary tether to the world's most essential commodity. In 1973, you waited in line for gas. In 2026, the gas doesn't even make it to the pump because the payment systems for the tankers are failing in real time. This isn't just about the price per gallon. It is about the chemical chain. The petroleum derivatives trapped in the Gulf are the same ones used to manufacture essential medicines, fertilizers, and plastics. When the strait closes, the pharmacy shelves go empty just as fast as the fuel tanks. While the public is focused on the price of a gallon of unleaded, the shadow fleet of tankers is already diverting toward the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to delivery times and billions to the cost of global trade. As the crisis deepens, we need to track the money trail, specifically the $142 billion in insurance premiums that effectively vanished overnight. Lloyd's of London has reportedly suspended all war risk coverage for the Persian Gulf, meaning any ship entering those waters is doing so without the financial backing that allows global trade to exist. This is the supply chain tripwire that no one is discussing. When insurance is pulled, the ships stop moving regardless of what the admirals say. This conflict, happening 6,000 miles away, has already devalued your personal savings by an estimated 14% in a single afternoon trading session as the market's price in the end of cheap energy. The narrative being pushed is that this is a matter of foreign policy and high-level diplomacy, but the reality is much more local. It is the systematic liquidation of the middle-class safety net. Your 401k is tied to companies that cannot operate without the petroleum-based logistics of the 21st century. We are seeing a massive huddle among central bankers who realize that the inflationary pressure of $200 a barrel oil cannot be tamed with interest rate hikes. It is a physical shortage that no amount of digital money printing can solve. Remember the Option 9 protocol I mentioned earlier? It isn't just a military move. It is a domestic emergency banking act designed to prevent a total run on assets as the public realizes the purchasing power of their currency is evaporating. They want you to believe this is about protecting democracy or shipping lanes, but the balance sheets suggest it is about managing the decline of an over-leveraged system that can no longer afford its own fuel. We must now address the most sobering aspect of this crisis, the reveal of the Option 9 contingency. This is not a theory. It is a framework for the federalization of all energy assets within the continental United States. This means the government assumes direct control over every barrel of oil, every refinery, and every distribution network in the country. Internal reports suggest that 38 senior military leaders are currently signing a dissent cable, a formal protest regarding the potential use of domestic troops to guard these refineries against their own citizens. We are talking about the possibility of a National Guard checkpoint at every chevron and shell in your zip code. This protocol is the emergency glass being broken because the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at its lowest level in decades. The mental movie of this reality is jarring. A nation that defined itself by mobility suddenly frozen in place, with fuel allocated based on essential service status rather than market demand. The clock is not just ticking in some far off. The administration is currently deciding whether to trigger the full extent of these powers. If you are operating on the assumptions of the 3-year-old old world, you are unprepared. The transition from a market economy to a command energy economy can happen in the span of a weekend. The question isn't whether this plan exists. It's whether the current blockade in the Strait of Hormuz has already made its implementation inevitable. There is one final factor that changes the entire calculus: a black swan event in the Mediterranean. As the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, there has been a sudden and unexplained maintenance shutdown of several major offshore gas rigs near Israel. This effectively cuts off the alternative energy route for Europe, creating a pincer movement on the global economy. When you connect the blockade in the east with the production halts in the west, you see a coordinated strangulation of the energy market. In this environment, being informed is the only asset class that does not depreciate. While the general public waits for official instructions that will likely come too late, those who understand the mechanics of the Option 9 protocol and the swarm reality in the Gulf can position themselves for what comes next. The final document I've been analyzing suggests an exit strategy that involves a total shift in how we value domestic production versus global trade. The tripwire has been pulled, and the systemic collapse is no longer a if, but a how fast. The only question left for you to answer is, where will you be when the lights go out and the digital tickers stop scrolling? They want you to be afraid because fear leads to compliance, but I want you to be informed because information leads to autonomy. We are entering a period where the traditional rules of finance and physics are being rewritten in real time. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell, not for my benefit, but so you are not left in the dark when the internet becomes a luxury and Option 9 goes live across the national grid. How is this story being covered in your local area? And have you noticed the maintenance signs appearing at your local stations yet? Which of the scenarios we discussed, the naval stalemate or the domestic federalization of energy, do you think will hit your life first? We will continue to track the movement of the Fifth Fleet and the shadow tankers daily. We'll continue tracking this situation. See you in the next update.